Hello again, YouTubers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm your host, the Board Game Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing and showing you how to play Behind the Throne. Now, Behind the Throne was put out by Ares Games. Let me show you their logo right there. And it was designed by Oleksandr Nevsky and Oleg Sidorenko. Now, Oleg and Oleksandr are a pair of game designers from the Ukraine who have previously designed a very popular game, which you may have played yourself, called Mysterium. Now, Mysterium was a big hit for them, and this is a new game that they designed that was released at this most recent Gen Con. Now, we have Mysterium here in the house, so look forward to that review sometime in the future. Lynn is a big fan of Mysterium. It's one of her favorite games to request to play, so when she saw that they were making another new game that was coming out at Gen Con, and she's become a bit of a fan of theirs, this was an easy pick to be on her list of games to buy at Gen Con this year. So obviously we managed to get it. Now, Behind the Throne is for ages 8 and up. It is a 30+ minute game, and it is for 2 to 4 players. Now, ages 8 and up is a pretty good estimate. This is not a super advanced game. The rules and mechanics are fairly easy to get a handle on and to understand, and 8-year-olds are a good place to start with the age level for playing this game. 30 minutes might be a little bit of a high estimate unless you are playing a full 4 players. 2-player games, which I've been playing quite a few 2-player games with Lynn, last much shorter. This feels like a much shorter, quick game that you can play in between other games or be able to play multiple games of this in a row. And for the 2 to 4 players, we've mainly been playing 2 players, though we've played a few games at 3 players as well. And this is a game that plays very well both with multiple players and with just 2 players. Quite a few games will say 2 to 4 players, but in reality you really need 3 to 4 players to play it right, and the 2 players are just there so they can try to sell more copies. This is not the case with this game. This game plays very well with 2 players. So the game itself is a combination of a set collection and press your luck game. And I'll explain all that as I'm showing you how to play. The game is a card game. In the box you get the rules, and you also get a deck of cards, and that's the whole game. It's just a deck of cards. Now, the cards are very nice. Very nice cards. Let me show you them. The back of the cards has the same picture on the cover of the box. Let me show you that right here, where you have the throne and the crown and the scepter there. And then on the front, the artwork style of this particular game feels like it feels like a animation style, but a bit more of a sophisticated animation style than what you may normally think of when you're thinking of animation. Now here's one of the cards. This is the highest value card. This is the king. The king has 9 points, as you see up there at the top, and at the bottom here, the markings on the bottom of the card always represent the handicap or the special ability that the card gives you. The very high point cards, the king and the queen, give you a handicap because they're worth the most points, whereas the lower level cards, the less they're worth, usually the better and more useful their ability is. Here's the queen. She's worth 8 points. Here's a much lower card. This is a minstrel. Now, the minstrel is worth 6 points, and he has quite a useful ability there, which I'll go into what all that means when I'm showing you how to play. There is an assassin. So now the artwork on these cards, like I say, it's very nice. This is an interesting one. This is, I believe it's called the Mystic. His 4 arms there. Very cool looking picture. So that's a look at the components, because again, the components just the cards. So that's a look at most of the components there for Behind the Throne. So I'm going to take you to the table, and we're going to go through a few example rounds of how you play a game of Behind the Throne. I'm going to fully explain how to play a game of Behind the Throne. And then we're going to come back. I'm going to give you my feelings on the game. I'm going to rate it and review it. And we're going to get a second opinion from Lynn. So I'll see you back here in just a few minutes. Okay, so here we see a setup for Behind the Throne. I just wanted to speak a little briefly on the theme before we talk about how to play the game, because I forgot to mention the theme in the introduction. Now, the theme of this game is that we the players, are each shadowy organizations that are vying for power behind the throne in the kingdom. We are trying to gain influence with the different members of the king's court, and gaining the influence with the more important members of the court will allow you to gain control of the kingdom from behind the throne. So here we see a game setup. This is a full setup. You shuffle up the deck, you put it in the middle of the table, and you put the lantern card next to it. That's where the discard pile goes. And that's it. Unlike many other card games, there is no dealing of a hand to the players, and that's a full setup for the game. Now, in this case, we've set the game up for 2 players. As you can see here, there are many cards still in the box. These cards are for the 3 and 4 players because the game scales based on the number of players. You remove some of the cards of each type of card when you're playing with less players. And this helps because the deck is used as a timer for the end of the game, as well as a deck of cards, and therefore it helps the game to stay at a good length depending on how many players you're using. So the main mechanic of this game is that you draw cards and line them up in front of the deck, and as you do, you're drawing these cards to hopefully be able to obtain them and bring them in front of you. You can draw up to 5 cards in a line. You may stop drawing at any time as long as you haven't gone over and take those cards, but if you do go over, you lose all the cards and you put them in the discard pile. Now you go over by drawing a card that is a larger number than the previous card played. There are 2 special actions you can take while drawing, in addition to the special actions that are provided by cards you have in front of you. The special actions you can take while drawing are to swap and destroy. To destroy, you have to draw a card that is the same number as the card previous to it, in which case you can destroy a card of your choice on your opponent's side. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly the same number. You can use abilities of cards in front of you to alter its number to become the same number. The other ability of swap is, after drawing a number of cards, which can be 1 card, you can give that card to your opponent and steal one of their cards. There are a couple cards which give abilities that help you protect you from the swap and destroy, but we'll get into that when we see the cards. Let's see the game happen. We'll go through a few turns. The first player is going to draw their first card. So they draw a 5. Now 5 is a nice middle number card. There's a good chance that the next card will be lower than it, so the first player decides to press their luck. They're going to draw another card. Whoops! They went over. So they lose all their cards and put them in the discard. Now it's the second player's turn to go. So they draw a card and they draw a 1. Now, it is very difficult not to go over when you've drawn a 1 as your first card, because the only card that wouldn't put you over is another 1. So in this case, the second player just is going to take the 1 and tell the first player it's their turn again. The first player then just draws an 8. Very lucky for the first player. Very unlikely they're going to go over. There's only 1 card that could make them go over. And the 5 is not that card. Now at this point, after having a lousy first turn, the first player decides to just take these 2 cards and not press their luck any further. And they get a 8, which is a queen, and a 5, which is a judge. Now let's have a look at these cards real quick. They have some interesting abilities on them. The judge has an ability which, if you turn him sideways once for that round, he will duplicate the ability of one of your other cards. Even if that other card was already sideways, because you didn't have the most of it, or because you had already used it in that round. The queen does not have an ability, she has a disability. Both the king and the queen, which are the most valuable cards, because they are the 8 and the 9, have disabilities that come along with them. They make it a little harder for you to do certain things. In the case of the queen, she makes it a little harder for you to destroy enemy cards. You have to draw more cards in the row than you have queens in order to use the destroy ability before you can use the destroy ability by getting 2 cards of the same number.
The king has a similar effect, but his effect is with swapping. And in his case, you have to have more cards in the row. You have to have equal to or more cards in the row than you have kings in front of you to be able to do a swap. And lastly, I just want to show this soldier card here has an ability where you can turn him sideways once per turn to give -3 to the number of the newest card drawn for the purposes of seeing if you go over or seeing if you can match the previous card to destroy one of your opponent's cards. Now, your cards with abilities on them, not the disabilities, but the cards with abilities on them only get to be vertical if you either have the most of that particular card or are tied for the most of that particular card. In this case, both player 1 and player 2 have cards from completely different types, so automatically have the most of that type, so they get to keep them vertical. Let's see what happens as we play a few more turns. So that was player 1's turn. It's now player 2's turn. Player 2 draws a card and gets a 7. So that's a pretty high number. They're going to press their luck and keep going. They get a 2. That is not higher than a 7. They're good with the 2. They decide not to press their luck any further, though, because it would be hard to get a 2 or less. So they're going to take their 7 and their 2, and now they have a 1, a 7, and a 2. It's player 1's turn. Player 1 draws a 5. Now, at that point, they are going to just keep the 5 and wind up with a second 5 in front of them because they don't want to go over and lose that second 5. Player 2 goes and draws a 3. Now at this point, player 2 can use one of his abilities. This ability here, for the seer, allows them to check what the next card is before deciding if they want to draw it or not. So they're going to take a look. Let's see. Ooh, that would definitely make them go over. So they're not going to take it. They're going to take their 3 and let player 1 go. Player 1 draws that and definitely wants it, so they're going to keep going, and they want to press their luck with it. So they're going to draw, and they get a 2. So at that point, they're going to take the 7 and the 2. Now, both player 1 and player 2 have 2s, but they have an equal number of 2s, so they both get to stay vertical still. Back to player 2. Player 2 draws and gets a 4. They decide they're going to press their luck, and they're going to draw a 6. Now, what they can do here is turn their soldier sideways to give that 6 -3, so it becomes a 3 for the immediate purposes, and that means that they're not going to go over. Now, they really don't want to go over and lose these cards, so the next thing they're going to do is they're going to check what the next card is, and while it would normally make them go over, because they have the gesture that allows them to get plus or -1 to one of their cards, this is really good for them. They're going to draw this, give it -1, which means now it is a 6, and they get to destroy one of their opponent's cards. However, if we look at their opponent's cards, we see their opponent has a 7, whose ability, as long as you have the most or are tied for the most, which they are, of 7s, means that if your opponent tries to destroy one of your cards, they must destroy this card and don't get to choose any others. So they lose their 7. At this point, they decide they don't want to risk it any further because they got some very nice cards there, so they're going to take them. So they wind up with a second 7. They have a 6 and a 4, but you can only have 5 kinds of cards in front of you. So they're going to discard the 1, and they're going to wind up with a 4, a 6, a 3, 2 7s, and a 2, and they're doing quite well. Next, we have player 1's turn, who draws a 3. So now player 1 is going to have a look at the next card using his mystic, who is tied for the most for, and he sees that it would not make him go over. So he's going to go ahead and take that card. Now he has judges, which means for the judge, he can duplicate the mystic's ability and look again. And sure enough, it would not make him go over. So thank you, judge. He gets to draw that, and that is a double, and that will destroy one of his opponent's cards, who again has some alchemists, and therefore has to lose one. At this point, he's going to take what he has, and he has now 2 5s, an 8, 3 2s, and a 3. Now, having the most 2s means that his opponent, who has less, can no longer use their ability, and they will be permanently sideways until he has equal to or more 2s than his opponent, as he can no longer use the ability. Now, play goes back and forth like this with you taking turns until you run out of cards in the deck. At which point you take the discard pile and shuffle it up into a new draw deck. Except that the discard pile contains the lantern card, which is now somewhere in the draw deck once you've shuffled it up again. When the lantern card comes up, the game ends. At which point you are going to count up your points. So if we look at how it stands here with player 1, you only get points for stacks that you have at least 2 of that card. And then what you do is you get a number of points, no matter how many cards are in it, equal to the number of the cards. So he would get no points for the 3 because there's only 1 of it. He would get 2 points for the stack of 2s that have at least 2 cards in them. He would get 5 points for the stack of 5s that have at least 2 cards in them, and no points for the 8. And that's how you count up the score at the end of the game. The player with the largest score wins a game of Behind the Throne. So, that's how you play a game of Behind the Throne. Now let's head back, and I'm going to review and rate it, and we're going to get a second opinion from Lynn.
Welcome back. That is how you play a game of Behind the Throne. Now, as you can see, you've got the combination of set collection and press your luck. Plus, you've got all those interesting mechanics that allow you to destroy or steal cards, or protect you from destruction, stealing, or altering the numbers of the cards to either keep you from going over in the press your luck portion, or in some cases allow you to be more offensive and attack. There's a lot of variety in this game for a small game. I mean, it is a smaller game. It's a game that's really on two players is like a 15-minute game, 3 or 4 players, half an hour game. It's a tiny little filler game, but it actually has a fair number of mechanics in it for you to sink your teeth into for such a smaller game. I like this game a lot. This game is a lot of fun. I mean, the number one most important thing about a game is not how complicated or how many rules there are, but how much fun you have while playing it. And this is a fun game. This is very enjoyable. I will play this game anytime anybody asks me to play the game. There are many times I will ask to play this game. I have already played this game many, many times, and as is the nature of a fun, smaller game, you can play it multiple times in a row. And this is one of those games. If you have kids that you're trying to teach to play games a little more complicated than say checkers, and you're trying to graduate them onto the more advanced games, this is a great next step. It's not super complicated, but it does have some of the more interesting mechanics, the beginnings of the more interesting mechanics that you would see in more advanced games, and it's a great next step for them. If you want to just play a quick game where you only have half an hour and you're like, oh, let's play Behind the Throne before we go out, or you want to play as a filler game between other larger games or other smaller games also on a game night, this is a great game for that. If any of that applies to you, buy this game. This is a very well made game. The rules are clear and concise. There are no contradictions between the rules or problems between the rules and how the cards work. The card effects all make sense and are very intelligent and well thought out. The entire presentation of the game is very nice. It's a very good looking game. This is a very I have very positive feelings about this game. This game is a very, very nice game. And I've decided to rate this game 8 out of 10 stars. So there you have it. It's a very positive review from me. But let's get a second opinion. Lynn, how many stars out of 10 would you give to Behind the Throne?
8.
So Lynn is in full agreement with me. She decided to give this game 8 stars. Now, I do want to make a note that originally I was going to review this game 7 stars, but this is a game that the more I've played it, the more I've enjoyed it. And I've actually gone up to 8 stars for this game because I like it so much. I do recommend this game as actually a game for just about anyone, unless for some reason you yourself are severely adverse to set collection and press your luck games specifically, in which case, of course, don't play this game. But unless that is the case for you, this is a game I would recommend to just about anyone. It's a great game to have in your stable. And I do look forward to seeing more games from Alexander and Oleg, because the first two games I've gotten from them have both been really well designed games, and I've very much enjoyed them. So there you have it. Do you have any comments for me? Would you like to comment on anything from this video, or how I do my videos, or suggestions on how you think I should be doing my videos, or maybe suggestions for future video topics for my Geek Culture series, or future reviews for my review series? Comment down below. If you'd like to comment on the new color of the living room we just painted, comment down below. If you like this video and would like to see more like it, please, please, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, game on.